much larger, so they allow it to burn. Assuming that the methane can go into butane, for example, you get into a cylinder at home. So there's a lot of work to convert the methane into butane. Then you look at the transparent and conducting. Why are you looking at transparent and conducting? You are looking at Gorilla Glass in your mobile. You touch something. So when you are touching, you are giving two things. One is a pressure, slight pressure. So it immediately activates the mobility of electrons, so circuit goes through. Okay? So you need to have something which will be conducting. And it needs to be transparent so you can able to see something, not a work. Indium tin oxide is a classic example. For clean energy, fuel cell, lithium battery has been given the Nobel Prize, and hydrogen. So people, a lot of work. Even in the Indian government is pushing towards the mobility of going away from the otherwise known as the fossil fuel. And of course, that can storage, large quantity of storage charges. So if you are looking at, okay, you develop photovoltaics, another area which is being very well studied. So you get your chargers and you need something where the chargers get stored so that you can use it in the evening, battery. So that's the different way to look at it. Okay, rechargeable, supercapacitor. So material that can superconduct at room temperature. So I just put it up something which possibly give you an idea where you need to look for in terms of the material research. The list I wrote is representative and definitely not complete. So for the young mind, it's very good. Whereas for this particular talk, I'm going to connect it up. We will talk about some property as well later. But we are going to look for materials that are very close to our heart in chemistry. Color. Whenever you talk about color, chemistry you talk about color. Whenever you talk about color, you talk about chemistry. And I am not going to talk about, so if you look at around, Reverend Father make an exception, everybody else has a colored dress, including me. Where does the color come from? Dye. Of course, the dyeing industry is a different thing. Most of it is an organic dye. So, what we are going to talk about is there something called an inorganic dye. There is an inorganic dye where it is being used. Okay? So, what is the reason for color in a compound? Whenever you are talking about a color, whether it is an organic compound or an inorganic compound, some light has to absorb, something has to reflect out. So you are going to look at the absorption and something called a complementary color. So we are going to look at all these aspects. Okay? I am not going to talk about the organic part of it. When visible light hits the chromophore, the chromophore is a molecule, an atom, which is capable of absorbing the light, the visible light, what we are seeing outside. That light, if you can absorb, then we would be looking for, by exciting an electron from a ground state into an excited state. A lot of things happen after that. Now, the chromophore are generally responsible for the color in a compound. Please remember, the color, what you are looking, is not the color of the light which is absorbed. Okay? I will come back and address that. So, how do we identify new chromophore? The chromophore is a region in a molecule where the energy difference, you talk about the HOMO and the LUMO. Okay? And the separate molecular orbital fall within the range of the visible spectrum. Visible spectrum is not very large. We are looking at 400 to 700 nanometer. Very, very small in most of the colored materials are organic, dye molecules, food additives, paints, etc. Majority of them. But there are colors in inorganic chemistry. We are all students of chemistry. You go to the lab, you go and look at the copper chloride, copper carbonate, cobalt chloride, cobalt sulfate, you name it, anything. Beautiful colors, copper sulfate, pentahydrate. Very good color, beautiful blue, copper sulfate blue. Okay? The color in organic compound depend on the energy difference normally between N to pi star, pi to pi star, sigma to pi star, etc. Okay? Various different energy differences. Okay? So you are looking at the ground level energy, excited level energy. Now, if you look at chlorophyll, so I know the formula there, the magnesium containing phosphoranic ring. And we know that it's green in color. Why it is green in color? Mainly because the chlorophyll absorbs mainly the blue and the red region. This molecule absorbs only the blue and the red region. So the remaining one is reflected by plant structure like cell walls. It's less absorbed. So if you look at the wheel, the white light splitting into 7 different colors which are originally conceived by Isaac Newton around 400 years back, roughly. Okay? And if you look at, there are something called the primary colors, yellow, red and blue. And then there are secondary colors. You know that if you want to create a white light, there are many different ways. One is red, green and blue. 1/3 red, 1/3 green, 1/3 blue. RGB. That is enough to get a white color. You can also create white light by 2 colors, blue and yellow. You mix blue and yellow, you will be able to get a white light. Okay? So there are many, many different things. I want all of you to remember that the light gets absorbed in a particular region, the color what you observe would be opposite, complementary. So if the material absorbs in the yellow region, the color what you get of the compound would be purple. I do not know how many of you, when I was a little boy, which no longer exists even in my little town, there was something called a dyeing chai butter, they call it. You ask them and go into a class, tell him that I want a red color. He won't use a red dye. He will use a dye. If you look at from this, if you want to have a red, you will be using a dye which is green. You will think this guy is bad. He is using green and go to get a green color. Sir, I want red color. That is what it is. Inherently, those people may not know complementarity of the color. They may not know it, but they know by practical experience what is a complementary color. Okay? So, remember this diagram, you will get complementary colors. So, this is what all about. It is not necessary that the molecule need to absorb in one particular wavelength. Those of you who have not looked at it, please look at your organic book. And then you will see the absorption spectra or the UV visible absorption spectra. It will always be a broad curve. It will never be a sharp line. Whereas an IR spectra would be always a sharp line. Okay? So sharp line because IR is looking at one particular bond which is vibrating. Whereas the UV visible is going to look at a particular area, and while the maximum at half would give you that. So you can also have an absorption in violet, blue and green. So you are looking at the entire region between something like 400 to 550 nanometer with a peak something around 460. then the color what you get would be orange or red, depending on how the being shifted. Because I am going to use that to look for a new colored compound. The chromophore I mentioned would be the molecule which absorb on this side and the color what we get on this side. So your absorption by a particular center, most of the time I go to concentrate on a metal center, and the color what you observe will be different. What happens? So you have a material, okay, matter, and you have a light which is in the visible region fall on this particular. So what are the various things that can happen? So you can have an electron getting excited, goes into the excited state and come to the delayed release of energy coming back to the ground state. You can have the photoluminescence. And photoluminescence you can have phosphorescence and fluorescence. The ideas and mechanisms slightly vary. You can have a transmission, of course, with the loss of energy, because any body which absorbs the energy, because the light waves are energy, and it interacts with the electrons, there will be a loss of energy during the absorption and interaction, so you will have a different color. So you will have during the transmission. The light also can get scattered. The only science Nobel Prize in India came for light scattering by Sir Norman. We would be celebrating next week the great Roman discovery on February 28th. Okay, that's called the Science Day in India because of the Roman discovery which was mentioned or announced in February 28th by Professor Sir Roman. And you can also have reflection, like a mirror. So again there will be a loss in energy.
Hello.
So, very easy to manipulate the color in organic, not directly in organic. So, there are compounds in organic that depend on transition elements. So, you are looking at preferably a first flow transition element where you have unpaired electrons. That unpaired electron is going to give you your. So we are going to talk about inorganic colored compound. See, I always believe a lot of examples are there. I can talk about example of example. Rather,
Hello.
I will
Hello.
make you to understand what is the fundamentals behind all this. Okay? So if you look at the colored compound, you look at it here. The oldest known colored compound in the world are red. Any
Hello, check 1, 2, 3.
to study chemistry. I want to learn. Why I am mentioning this? You have to have the passion. Chemistry is about passion. You need to have the passion to pursue chemistry. I already mentioned before, Professor Narasimhan is still alive. You can ask him. There are many a day he can't even take class. I was sitting there in the corner, that's my seat always in the class. By the time he wrote the first equation, I will stop it. Class will not progress further. Cross question, it goes on like that. Suddenly you look at, hey, Natarajan, stop it, I have to finish some portion. That kind of relationship we had. Same with Pattan, same with Srinivasan. Unless you have that kind of a curious mind, no, you need to have a burning passion. I have to learn more. That is exactly what Perkin did when, and the boss who was in the lab, he had a lab assistant. He said, I am going for a Europe tour for 3 months, the lab assistant will help. He walked off. He said, you try and make an antidote for malaria. He wrote roughly and walked off. The experiment failed. He couldn't make it. He broke the experimental vessel. And then he was very dejected, wiped everything clean and went and slept. Next day morning he come, wherever he wiped, the cloth he wiped, everything was this kind of very deep purple color. He repeated the experiment, not once, many, many times. Every time he got the same product. Then he came back and he said, I couldn't make antidote for malaria, but I made this. The Prabhupada is very good. He can patent. So he goes to the patent office and wanted a patent. So what did the other man say? No, you are too young to make patent. He was only 17. 17. Many of you are older. So the Prabhupada again goes, put the patent on him. He did it on his own. I have no role to play. He signs affidavit. He gets the patent. Finishes PSC. 21 he starts a company. It's not an imaginary story. We are talking about some story which happened 150 years back, 1848. By 32 he retired. He became a multi-millionaire by that time by selling this colored compound. Okay? This is something for a message for all of you that unless create that passion. Okay? Now of course the hand purple I'll drop this thing. I was talking about the planar complex of copper. So now I talked about distortion in geometry. How about a disorder in the structure itself, in the compound coordination environment? So if you have a compound like this, where the zinc is in a highly distorted trigonal bipyramidal coordination or in a tetrahedral coordination, it is in between. So it kind of, this particular bond can move here and there. So when that happens, you have a disorder as well as distortion. When you look at, you have a very deep blue colored material. So you can substitute in the lithium zinc borate, because if you look at the earlier example I gave you, yttrium, indium oxide or yttrium, gallium oxide, yttrium is known as a rarer, indium and gallium is also very rare, very expensive. We were looking for compound elements which are cheap. Zinc is cheap, boron is, you are walking on the ground basically. So when you look at, you substitute cobalt, it is not again very expensive. Then you can have, even for a 10% cobalt, you get a very deep blue color. Again, you remember the manganese compound 3 plus D4 gives rise to a very deep blue. The difference here is this is based on cobalt, and cobalt 2 plus very reactive is actually a catalytic reaction can happen with the sunlight. This cobalt 2 plus which is here in a tetrahedral distorted trigonal bipyramidal coordination can catalytically decompose the paint which is based on organic molecules. So this color, even though it's very brilliant, not brilliant, useful towards the usefulness for painting industry. And again, I just wanted to give you an idea. I don't know how many of you ever went anywhere near a paint shop. You go and ask for a paint, Anandar paint enna color vaanu solluva. And there are shops, if you go to town, Madurai, you can choose a color and that fellow will tell you 1 hour. They will mix it right there, mix 2-3 colors and give you. Okay, if you are not attempted, go and ask them. The color is always represented in terms of 3 numbers. Each color is always represented in terms of number, and this is known as a 2-dimensional chromaticity diagram. So, if you look at, you have a color which goes from red to green, and you have a color which goes from yellow to blue, and this up and down color along the z-axis is how light or how strong the color is. You see that this is dark black and this is white. And what normally you want to take one small portion of the dye molecule and you want to dilute that in a larger volume so that you can get it. So for that, the value L should be reasonably good. Okay? You look at this compound, the L value is not great. Look at the yttrium, indium, manganese, the blue color is very high. Again, if you are going to look at these colors, the B star is very high because you are looking at a negative value, so you are looking at the negative, that's a positive. So that indicates that it is a very deep blue. And same thing on this side, you look at the red component is also very high, red is positive, plus 32. So you basically want to have a negative red like this and a positive or negative deep blue to have a very good color. So this is something which is desirable in any colored material. I don't have time, I'm going to stop it. I just go to more or less to the end. There are a lot of things I wanted to see, but I will just show you what we did at the end of all that. So what we did, you see the colors, these are all in different compound, different coordination environment, tetrahedral, trigonal bipyramidal, octahedral, every one of them. Then you look at by the time you put cobalt, nickel, copper, you can get a variety of colored material. And these are very good inorganic pigments. Where do you use them? I don't know, some of you would have seen the advertisement. During the rainy season they somebody put a house and then they put a big umbrella around it so that it doesn't get, color doesn't get changed due to the rain. I showed you the colors which were there from the Gupta period, 2000 plus years. They are still available because they are inorganic in nature. So external painting is one, automobile painting is another one. So these are very desirable area where inorganic pigments are being used extensively. So people are looking at new color material. So they could get in the color wheel, the literature, every one of the color by careful manipulation of a coordination geometry. Okay, I would probably conclude here the importance of the mineral structures. I could talk only 2 structures, many we did, and many have non-centrosymmetric space groups, non-centrosymmetric coordination geometry, distorted coordination environment, and empty 3D, 4D, 5D. You are looking at metal to metal charge transfer, super exchange. Then optical transition knowledge, very important to look for new properties. Okay? I have to thank all the students who worked tirelessly. For example, Arul is now a professor at NIT Chicago, and Natarajan became a professor in America, Arizona State University from Tirupattur. And Anandar is working in Alia Chemicals, the senior chemist in Alia Chemicals, Bengal. And Dr. Shivakumar is the Madurai Kamaraj University School of Chemistry student who is writing his thesis. And these are the 3 students who are going to finish in the next 6 months and they are working. Okay? And I am extremely thankful for all the very generous research support from Science and Engineering Research Board, CSIR, J.C. Bose National Professorship, as well as the Institute of Science, Bangalore. I sincerely again thank the Arul College, especially Madam St.Xavier, for this introduction to come back, in a way, my alma mater to this particular college. I thank you very much for the opportunity. Anybody has any questions, clarifications, I would be more than happy to.
Anyone with some clarification in a few minutes? I'll be very happy some of the students come up with some interesting questions to Professor.
You remember what I told you is not some imagination. I told you from the maximum is still alive, you can ask him. Or Dr. Tirupattur is still there in St.Xavier's college, you can ask him. He was a demonstrator, then I was a student. And every doubt I got, he was a very fresh MSc student. Very important, chemistry is about curiosity and passion. Both of them have to combine.
So, Professor, I'd like to thank you for the interesting seminar.